The story begins on a stormy evening, outside a small dimly lit bar on the edge of town. John stood rigid, the rain pelting his coat as he watched the man who had stolen his wife laughing inside. The glow from neon signs cast eerie shadows on his face. "I never thought it would come to this," John thought, his heart pounding with rage and disbelief. Inside, the man boasted loudly, "Yeah, I took her from you, and there's nothing you can do about it." The bar's atmosphere was tense, filled with smoke and the hum of bitter conversations. John clenched his fists, the weight of betrayal crushing him, but he had a plan, a secret weapon hidden in plain sight. As the night deepened, the line between justice and revenge blurred. The city lights flickered, and John's eyes hardened, promising that this chapter was far from over. John stepped inside the bar, heart pounding, his eyes locking on the man who thought he had won. The room smelled of stale beer and cigarette smoke. "You really think you can brag about this?" John said, voice low but cutting through the noise. The man's laughter faltered for a moment. "I took what was mine," he spat back. But John had done his homework. "Funny thing," John said, "I know things about you no one else does." The bar quieted as the tension escalated. The air grew thick with anticipation. John pulled a worn file from his coat, his trump card, exposing the man's shadowy past. Everyone's attention snapped to the page. The battle had just begun. The man's smug expression faltered as John's words hit home. "What's this?" he demanded, trying to glance at the file. John's voice was calm, but firm. "Your criminal record." Gasps spread through the bar. "Everyone here deserves to know who you really are." The man's facade cracked, revealing desperation underneath. John felt a surge of vindication, but also a cold weight settling in. This was no victory yet, only the opening salvo in a war that would redefine their lives. The crowd leaned in, sensing the storm brewing between them. The man snarled, "You think this changes anything? She's mine now." John didn't flinch. "No, it changes everything. You've been hiding behind lies for too long." Around them, the bar's atmosphere thickened, friends and strangers alike watching, caught in the unfolding drama. The bartender paused mid-pour, eyes fixed on the two men. Outside, the storm continued to rage, matching the tempest inside. John's voice grew louder, steady. "This isn't just about her. It's about truth and respect." The man's facade cracked further as whispers filled the room, signaling a shift in power. Suddenly, a friend of John stepped forward, nodding in support. "He's right. You've been running from your past, but it always catches up." The man's face twisted in rage and fear. John felt a moment of clarity. This was not just about losing a wife, but reclaiming dignity. The room hummed with anticipation, every eye on the man's reaction. Outside, the rain slowed, as if nature itself held its breath. John's voice softened, yet remained firm. "It's time for you to face what you've done." The battle lines were drawn. The next move belonged to the man who thought he'd won. The tension inside the bar thickened as silence fell over the crowd. John's eyes never left the man's face, watching as the weight of exposure began to sink in. The man shifted uncomfortably, a flicker of doubt replacing his usual arrogance. "You think this changes everything?" he growled, voice low but shaky. John replied steadily, "It changes how everyone sees you. No more lies, no more hiding." Around them, whispers swelled into murmurs. Friends who had once been silent now exchanged looks of disbelief. John felt a strange mix of triumph and sorrow. The woman who was once his wife stood in the background, conflicted, but watching. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the night damp and still, as if the world held its breath for what would come next. Suddenly, the woman stepped forward, her voice breaking the silence. "I never wanted this to hurt anyone," she said softly, eyes flickering between John and the man. The room stilled, every gaze now on her. "But I need to be honest with myself, and with all of you." She spoke of confusion, betrayal, and the painful choices she had made. John's heart ached as he listened, the years of love and loss weighing heavily. The man's expression hardened, trying to regain control, but the damage was done. The atmosphere was raw, charged with unresolved emotions. Outside, the city lights flickered, mirroring the fragile hope in the air. This was not the end, but a fragile crossroads for all involved. John took a deep breath, stepping closer to the woman. "Whatever happened, I want you to know I'm still here," he said gently, voice thick with emotion. She nodded, a faint smile breaking through tears. The man, however, sneered. "You don't get to rewrite history," he spat. John ignored him, focusing instead on the fragile moment of reconciliation. Around them, some patrons began whispering about second chances and forgiveness, while others remained skeptical. The night outside was quiet, the storm's fury spent but its aftermath lingering. John realized this was a battle for more than love. It was a fight for truth and respect in the face of pain and betrayal. The man's jaw tightened, his eyes blazing with fury and desperation. "You think you're so noble, but I have nothing left to lose," he hissed. John met his gaze evenly. "That's where you're wrong. You still have a choice. Face your past or let it destroy you." The crowd leaned in, sensing the climax of the confrontation. The bartender wiped his hands slowly, watching the drama unfold like a silent judge. Outside, a street lamp flickered erratically, casting long shadows that danced like ghosts along the sidewalk. The man's bravado began to crumble, replaced by the stark reality of his unraveling facade. This was more than a fight. It was a reckoning. John's voice softened but held undeniable strength. "You can still choose to make things right," he said quietly. The man's shoulders sagged, the fight draining from him. The woman stepped forward again, taking John's hand in hers. Around them, the crowd began to disperse slowly, murmurs fading into the background. Outside, the first light of dawn painted the sky in pale hues of hope and renewal. John and the woman exchanged a glance filled with tentative forgiveness. The path ahead was uncertain, marked by scars and questions, but also by the fragile promise of healing. This chapter was closing, but the story was far from over. Morning light filtered through the cracked blinds of John's modest apartment, casting slats of gold across the worn furniture. John sat quietly at the kitchen table, staring at an old photo of him and his wife, before everything fell apart. The silence was heavy with memories and regret. He murmured, "I thought I knew everything about her, but the truth always finds a way to surprise." His phone buzzed with a message, an anonymous tip about the man's past. John's resolve hardened. This wasn't just about reclaiming what was lost, but about uncovering the full story. As he stood, the weight of the coming confrontation settled deep in his chest. Today, the past and present would collide in a way that no one could ignore. John stepped outside into the chilly morning air, the city awakening with distant sirens and murmurs of traffic. His mind raced through the details he had uncovered the night before. The man's history was darker than anyone suspected, a tangled web of deceit, fraud, and violence. John clenched the file tighter, the paper edges worn from repeated reading. Each revelation deepened his conviction. This wasn't just personal revenge, it was justice waiting to be served. As he walked through familiar streets, the weight of responsibility pressed down on him. The woman's face flashed in his mind, a fragile beacon amid the turmoil. He whispered, "For her, for the truth." At a quiet cafe, John met with an old friend who had access to confidential records. "What you've got here is explosive," his friend whispered, sliding a printed dossier across the table. John's fingers trembled as he scanned the pages, names, dates, and connections that revealed the man's criminal network. "This goes beyond personal grudges," John said quietly. "It's corruption, manipulation, and fear." The cafe's ambient noise faded as John absorbed the gravity of what lay ahead. The pieces were falling into place, but with each truth uncovered, the danger grew. He knew the next steps had to be calculated and precise. The fight was no longer just about love. It was about dismantling a dangerous facade. As evening descended, John returned home, the city lights flickering on like stars caught in concrete. He sat by the window, the dossier open beside him, his thoughts racing. The man who stole his wife wasn't just a rival, he was a threat to everyone around them. John's mind replayed every conversation, every glance. "I have to be ready," he said aloud. The weight of uncertainty pressed on him, but also fueled his determination. Outside, rain began to fall softly, a steady rhythm against the glass. It mirrored the storm inside him, quiet but relentless. Tomorrow would bring confrontation, and John knew he had to be prepared for whatever came next. Late into the night, John paced the small room, rehearsing what he would say when the time came. "This ends tomorrow," he whispered fiercely, clenching his fists. His mind was a whirlwind of emotions: anger, hope, fear, but above all, clarity. He knew the path would be hard and uncertain, but he was ready to face it head on. The clock ticked steadily, marking the countdown to reckoning. Outside, the rain slowed to a drizzle, and the first hints of dawn began to glow faintly. John's resolve was unshakable. The final act of this battle was close, and nothing would stop him from reclaiming his life and exposing the truth once and for all. The next morning, John arrived at the courthouse early, the cold air sharp against his skin. His steps echoed through the marble halls, a steady rhythm that matched the pounding in his chest. He clutched the dossier tightly, the proof of the man's crimes burning in his hands. "This is my chance to make it right," John thought, scanning the faces around him, some curious, others indifferent. The man who stole his wife was already inside, confident and unshaken. But John knew the truth would cut deeper than any bravado. As the judge called the courtroom to order, John steeled himself. This was more than a trial, it was the reckoning of a lifetime. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. The man's smug smile remained, but there was a flicker of unease in his eyes. John took a deep breath and began presenting the evidence: forged documents, hidden arrests, connections to illicit activities. The courtroom murmured, disbelief growing with each revelation. The man's lawyer tried to interrupt, but the judge silenced him firmly. "We will hear all the facts before passing judgment," the judge declared. John's voice was steady and clear as he laid out the story that had haunted him. The truth was no longer hidden, it was exposed for all to see. The man's defense was weak, unraveling under the weight of John's evidence. "You're lying!" he shouted, desperation creeping into his voice. But the photos, the records, the witnesses were undeniable. John watched as the man's mask slipped, revealing the vulnerability beneath. The courtroom was silent, except for the judge's steady pen scratching notes. John felt a mixture of relief and exhaustion. The battle was far from over, but this was a turning point. Truth had pierced the veil of deceit, and justice was finally within reach. Outside the courthouse, the city breathed a little easier, unaware of the quiet victory unfolding within. After hours of testimony, the judge called a recess. John stepped outside into the cool afternoon, the sun breaking through scattered clouds. He felt the weight of the day settle on his shoulders, but also a glimmer of hope. The woman approached cautiously, her eyes filled with gratitude and uncertainty. "Thank you," she whispered. John nodded, feeling the fragile bridge between past wounds and possible healing. He knew there were still battles ahead, but for the first time, he believed in the possibility of peace. The city buzzed quietly around them, indifferent yet alive, as if carrying the story forward with it. Back inside, the courtroom filled once more. The judge's voice commanded attention as the verdict approached. John sat stiffly, eyes locked on the man, whose fate now hung in the balance. The judge pronounced the man guilty on multiple charges, the words echoing like a thunderclap. A mixture of shock and relief rippled through the room. The man lowered his head, defeated but silent. John exhaled slowly, the tension draining from his body. Justice had been served, but the scars remained. This victory was bittersweet, a testament to pain, resilience, and the hope for a new beginning. Outside, dusk settled softly, promising the dawn of something better. Days after the verdict, John found himself wandering through a quiet city park, the late afternoon sun filtering through the leaves. His thoughts circled the events that had changed his life. Though justice was served, the emptiness lingered. "It's not about winning," he whispered to himself. "It's about finding peace." He watched children play, couples stroll, life moving forward around him. The woman, once distant, had reached out, and tentative conversations were beginning. John knew healing would be slow, but hope was now a real possibility. His heart, once shattered, felt the first fragile stirrings of calm. The city's hum blended with the soft rustle of the breeze, a gentle reminder that life always moves on. John met the woman at a small cafe, the air filled with the aroma of coffee and quiet chatter. She looked nervous but hopeful, fingers wrapped around a warm mug. "I want to try again," she said softly. John nodded, feeling a cautious optimism. "We can't erase the past, but maybe we can build something new." The conversation was halting but sincere, each word a step toward rebuilding trust. Outside, rain began to fall gently, the soft patter matching the tentative rhythm of their reunion. For the first time in a long while, John allowed himself to believe in second chances. The past was a shadow, but the future held light. In the following weeks, John focused on rebuilding his life. He returned to work with renewed energy, reconnecting with old friends and finding solace in routine. Yet the scars of betrayal lingered beneath his calm exterior. Late at night, memories haunted him, but he resisted the pull of bitterness. "I am stronger than this," he reminded himself. Slowly he began to forgive, not the man who hurt him, but himself for the pain he carried. Every small victory was a step toward reclaiming his joy. The city lights twinkled through his apartment window, a constant reminder that life, despite its wounds, was still beautiful. One evening, John received a call from the woman. "Can we meet?" she asked hesitantly. They met at a quiet park bench beneath glowing street lamps. The conversation flowed easier this time, laughter mingling with tears. They spoke of forgiveness, mistakes and hopes. John realized healing wasn't a straight path, but a winding journey they would walk together. The past still cast shadows, but it no longer controlled them. Under the soft glow of the lamps they found moments of peace, fragile but real. John breathed deeply, feeling gratitude for this chance to start anew, even if the future remained uncertain. As the weeks passed, John and the woman began to rebuild their relationship slowly but deliberately. Trust was fragile, yet every shared moment was a brick in a new foundation. John no longer looked back with anger, but forward with cautious hope. He knew wounds might never fully heal, but love could still grow amidst the scars. Together, they faced the uncertain future, stronger for having survived the storm. The city around them buzzed with life and possibility, a fitting backdrop for a story of redemption and renewal. John's heart, once heavy with loss, now beat with the quiet promise of tomorrow. John awoke to the soft glow of dawn streaming through the window. Today marked a new chapter, yet uncertainty lingered beneath his resolve. He dressed carefully, every movement deliberate, as if preparing for a final test. The woman's voice echoed in his mind, "We can heal, but only if we face the truth." John nodded silently, knowing the coming hours would demand courage beyond pain. Outside, the city stirred to life, indifferent to the struggles of two hearts. With steady breath, he stepped out, determined to confront the past one last time and claim the future he deserved. John met the woman in a quiet garden, dew still fresh on the grass. Her eyes reflected both vulnerability and strength. "I'm scared," she admitted softly. John reached out. "Fear doesn't define us. It's how we move past it." They walked slowly beneath blooming trees, the silence between them filled with unspoken promises. The air was thick with possibility and the lingering scent of flowers. John realized healing wasn't a destination, but a journey they must travel together, step by cautious step. The world around them felt still, as if holding space for their fragile reconciliation. Later that day, John sat alone on a park bench, reflecting on the path behind and the uncertain road ahead. His mind wandered to the battles fought, and the lessons learned. I am not the man I was, he thought quietly. The scars remained, but they no longer controlled him. Around him, life blossomed with vibrant colors and sounds. Children played, birds sang, and the sun warmed his face. He took a deep breath, feeling gratitude for survival and growth. The future was still unknown, but for the first time, it held promise rather than fear. John stood slowly, ready to face whatever came next with open heart and steady resolve. That evening, John and the woman shared a quiet dinner at her apartment. The table was simple but inviting, candles flickering softly. Their conversation flowed with more ease than before, laughter mingling with moments of quiet reflection. "We're rebuilding," she said, eyes bright. John smiled, piece by piece, day by day. The past was not forgotten, but it no longer defined them. As the night deepened, so did their connection, fragile yet genuine. Outside, city lights twinkled through the window, mirroring the hope kindling between them. Together, they embraced the slow dance of healing, ready to face tomorrow hand in hand. As night settled, John stood by the window, gazing out at the quiet city below. The journey had been long and painful, but the horizon now promised peace. His thoughts drifted to the man who had tried to steal everything from him, defeated, exposed, a chapter closed. Yet, John knew forgiveness was not just for others but for himself. The future was a blank page, ready to be written anew. He whispered into the night, "This is my story now." A gentle breeze stirred the curtains, carrying away the last remnants of anger and pain. In that moment, John embraced hope, a fragile, beautiful beginning. The morning was crisp, the sky painted in soft pastels as John and the woman walked through the quiet streets of the city they once called home. Their steps were slow but purposeful, each moment a testament to the fragile trust rebuilding between them. John spoke softly, "We've survived the storm, but now we must learn to dance in the rain." Her eyes met his, reflecting hope and the promise of new beginnings. The city around them buzzed with life, unaware of the deep scars beneath their calm exterior. Yet in this shared silence, they found strength, an unspoken vow to face whatever came next together. Later, at a small community center, John volunteered alongside the woman, their hands busy planting new flowers in a shared garden. "Giving back feels like healing," she said quietly, eyes bright with purpose. John nodded, feeling the weight of past pain lift ever so slightly. The garden was a symbol, not just of renewal but of growth and resilience. Around them, children laughed and neighbors exchanged smiles, life moving forward in its quiet, unstoppable way. For John, this was the truest victory, reclaiming joy in the small moments and planting seeds of hope for the future. That evening, John sat by a rooftop fire pit, the city lights flickering below like a constellation of memories. He reflected on how far he had come, from betrayal and pain to this moment of quiet reflection. His phone buzzed with a message from the woman, "Thank you for never giving up." A soft smile crossed his lips. John whispered to the night, "This is just the beginning." The city breathed around him, alive with possibility. Though the past would always be a part of him, it no longer defined his story. The future was unwritten, and for the first time he felt ready to write it himself. John and the woman met one last time before parting ways for the night. Their embrace was gentle, but filled with the weight of unspoken promises. "We're not perfect," she said, voice trembling slightly, "but we're trying." John nodded, holding her close. "Trying is enough." The street lamps cast golden halos around them, framing a moment of fragile peace. They parted with a lingering look, hopeful, uncertain, but united in their shared journey. As she walked away, John watched, feeling a quiet strength settle in his chest. The story was far from over, but the next chapter would be theirs to write. As the night deepened, John stood alone on a bridge overlooking the river, the water reflecting city lights like shattered stars. The wind whispered around him, carrying away the last remnants of bitterness. He took a deep breath and whispered, "This is my story now, one of resilience, hope, and redemption." The river flowed endlessly beneath, a symbol of time's relentless march forward. John turned and walked away from the railing, ready to face whatever came next, with an open heart. The final scene was not an end, but a beginning, a haunting, powerful moment of quiet strength that would stay with him forever.